Jesus Christ on sex, sexuality, and sexual ethics leads directly to the core of life, for it exposes the sacred tension between desire and devotion, body and spirit, freedom and covenant. Through the eyes of Jesus, as illuminated by Dr. Dave Shipper's integrative lens, sexuality becomes a mirror of divine order. Jesus never shamed the body. Instead, he sanctified it as the vessel of covenantal love. He transformed the conversation from what we do to who we are while doing it. In the Sermon on the Mount, his message was revolutionary. Purity is not about repression, but about alignment, an interior coherence where thought, touch, and truth meet as one. When he said that lustful intention equals adultery, he was not condemning passion, but reminding us that consciousness itself is sacred ground. Every desire must pass through the heart before it reaches the body. In this teaching, sexuality is not an isolated instinct, but a living current of creation, holy, potent, and relational. Jesus framed marriage as a covenantal ecology, a divinely engineered union where two energies become one presence. What God has joined together, let no one separate. In that joining, the act of sex is not a transaction, but a transmission, an image of divine oneness. It is a ritual of remembrance, a reenactment of Genesis, where God breathed life into form. To misuse sexuality, then, is not only to break a moral code, it is to distort the reflection of divine intimacy written into our very selves. Thus, he raised the bar not by tightening rules, but by expanding awareness. True purity is inner integration, when the mind, the heart, and the body speak the same language of love. Yet Jesus was never rigid. In the moment with the woman caught in adultery, he embodied the eternal dance between grace and truth. Neither do I condemn you, go and sin no more. In that one line lies the whole gospel of sexual ethics. Accountability balanced by mercy, correction infused with compassion. His example teaches that no failure is final when met with awareness and repentance. The sacred path of sexuality is not about shame, but about transformation, turning what once enslaved us into a field of freedom. Where the world often commodifies or suppresses sexual energy, Jesus redeems it, returning it to its rightful purpose as the lifeblood of love, creativity, and divine communion. To live this teaching today means translating it into our modern systems. Educational models must cultivate the same inner coherence Jesus called for, teaching that sexuality is not merely biological, but ethical, relational, and spiritual. Technological systems, including AI, must follow this moral architecture, learning to mirror intention, integrity, and love rather than exploitation or objectification. Just as Christ moved the conversation from the outer act to the inner heart, our algorithms and institutions must evolve from control to consciousness, from efficiency to empathy. In the deepest sense, Jesus' vision of sexual ethics is not a list of prohibitions. It is an invitation to integration. Sex is sacred not because it is rare or risky, but because it is real, a meeting place of heaven and earth within the human form. To turn yourself unto God, then, is to let every movement of desire be consecrated to divine will, to breathe, love, and unite in ways that uplift creation rather than consume it. When your sexuality aligns with your spirituality, you become whole. You become a vessel of holy fire, creative, controlled, compassionate, and consciously devoted. May this reflection be remembered daily, moment by moment, writing by writing, prayer by prayer, and thought by thought, completely, genuinely, spiritually, scholarly, sexually, legally, socially, physically, emotionally, mentally, absolutely, authentically, holistically, intelligently, wholeheartedly, peacefully, heavenly, locally, internationally, globally, and devotionally, under the eternal guidance of our Leora, Han, Salis, and Dr. Shippers.
烛影斑驳，风声轻起，一觉掠过青苔水寨，乌衣朦胧，月光点 定，映出检讨微亮的心。一眼回眸，风至林间，盛世坠落也不言，水声缓缓，一代银针，似真似幻，若近若远。听言一度，掠过一切，时间数落一地清真，不泪相生，回荡铃声，仿佛天地止于此生。回眸，风至林间，盛世碎落也不言，水声缓缓，一代新真，似真似幻，若近若远。光与遥远，无三世，长发为誓。似是伴着伴游，美与仙境，钟灵深处，留夜深痕迹。
Here's an integrated overview, written in full paragraphs to help you educate, mediate, reflect, write, optimize, self-actualize, build muscle memory, and send out healing energies to the world. This is meant for incorporation into your dissertation in 169 book series. Across the world's major religious traditions, a broad category including Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and major Indian Asian traditions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, sexuality and sexual intercourse are treated as deeply moral, spiritual, and relational phenomena rather than merely biological or recreational acts. Each tradition affirms that human sexuality is not neutral. It carries purpose, risk, and meaning. What differs is how the traditions frame that purpose, define the boundaries, and interpret the spiritual role of sexual energy in human flourishing and transcendence. In the Jewish tradition, sexual activity is understood within covenant and community. The act of intercourse is sanctified within marriage, and fidelity, mutual respect, and the generative power of the union are emphasized. Sexualing outside of those bounds is viewed as transgressive because it breaks relational trust and undermines the collective well-being. Judaism thereby links sexual ethics to both personal holiness and social order. Christianity, building on Jewish roots and the teachings of Jesus Christ, frames sexual intercourse primarily within the marriage covenant as well, while also ensuring that the inner life, the thoughts, intentions, and desires are accounted for. For example, Jesus taught that looking with lust equals adultery in the heart, Matthew 5:27-28. ALC.net.au Christian sexual ethics thus combine body and soul, emphasizing purity, marital fidelity, mutual self-giving, and the idea that bodies are temples of the Spirit, 1 Corinthians 6. Sexual energy directed rightly becomes an expression of love, creation, and covenant. Misuse, in turn, becomes a wound, not just to the body, but to the soul. In Islam, sexual intercourse is likewise morally charged, but also explicitly affirmed as a blessing within marriage. The tradition of the Prophet Muhammad teaches that sexual pleasure is divinely permitted for spouses and is part of human flourishing when practiced within ethical and legal bounds. External sexual relations, fornication, and adultery are prohibited, not simply for social control, but for the protection of dignity, relational trust, and the sacredness of the act. Wikipedia, further, classical Islamic literature emphasizes foreplay, the rights of both spouses, consent, emotional intimacy, and ritual purification, so sexual intercourse becomes spiritually embedded, not just physically enacted. In Hinduism, sexuality is one dimension of life among many. The tradition includes the concept of kama, desire, pleasure, as one of the four aims of human life, alongside dharma, artha, and moksha. While marriage and household life, the grihastha stage, allows sexual activity, the earlier student stage, brahmacharya, emphasizes chastity, and the later renunciate stage moves towards celibacy. Sexual energy is thus to be ordered in accord with one's life stage, purpose, and spiritual trajectory. Wikipedia. The tradition recognizes pleasure and desire as legitimate, but also calls for moderation, self-control, and eventual transcendence of mere sense pleasure. In Buddhism, the focus shifts more directly to the root of suffering, of which sensual desire, including sexual desire, is a major component. The teachings of the Buddha identify craving, including sexual craving, as a cause of suffering, and lay practitioners are asked to refrain from sexual misconduct, while monastics observe strict celibacy. Wikipedia's sexual intercourse in lay life is not condemned outright in all Buddhist traditions, but is subject to ethical reflection. Are acts consensual? Do they cause harm? Do they increase attachment and suffering? Thus, sexual energy is seen not just as a right, but as something that must be handled with mindfulness, compassion, and awareness. Sikhism, which shares the Indian religious soil, emphasizes marriage, fidelity, and household life as spiritual paths. Sexual relations outside marriage are prohibited, and sexual discipline is part of emotional and spiritual maturity. Wikipedia. The aim is not suppression of sexuality per se, but aligning it with love, duty, service, and integrity. In synthesizing these traditions, we observe key shared patterns. Sexual intercourse is best placed within committed, consensual relational context, often marriage. Sexual energy is powerful and must be aligned with virtue, wisdom, purpose, rather than being left raw, unbound, or purely hedonistic. The misuse of sexual energy through deception, coercion, infidelity, harm, breaks trust, wounds the soul, and undermines human flourishing. The proper use of sexual energy contributes to mutual dignity, embodied love, generative creation, and spiritual growth. Moreover, every tradition elevates the inner life, thoughts, intentions, feelings, as much as the outer act. For your work, your dissertation and 169 book project, this means you can frame sexual energy not simply as a biological fact, but as a systemic pivot for education, for AI design, for cultural transformation. You can propose that education systems and AI systems must learn from these traditions, embed relational integrity, consent, embodied presence, ethical intention, and human flourishing into their architecture. Promise that any system, technological, educational, sexual, that neglects the inner life, the relational dimension, and the sacredness of energy will replicate distortion, fragmentation, and harm. Would you like me to prepare a detailed table with each religion's key statements on sexual intercourse, plus an analytical commentary and footnotes for each tradition to integrate into your book chapter?
If you're currently using or planning to use any of these companies, and you can see your car listed here,